Welcome back to the Casey Adams Show. Today I am joined by my good friend, Brandon Jenner.
Oh,
Brandon, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get back to it. We were just talking about some great stuff
Yes, we
before,
were,
before
yeah.
the intro happened. But thanks so much for taking the time to come
Go back
on
if you want to listen to the pre-intro bonus section.
Yeah,
Click
seriously.
click this button.
But you're talking about adversity, and I think that's so true. Continue what you were saying. Just
Well,
in terms of his mindset about
I'm so impressed by you, generally speaking, and at such like a young age, and also being from, was it West Virginia? You're from West Virginia, and
we're just Virginia, no West.
No West. Okay.
Yeah.
You're from Virginia, small town, right? You're like
very small town.
Small town.
Chesterfield County.
And also a very different upbringing, very meat-eating kind of environment, if that makes sense.
My dad, for context, my dad worked at Philip Morris, still does, tobacco company. My mom was a babysitter. Now she's worked as a special ed aide in a school for the last 13 years. She worked at Applebee's for 13 years, like very, very, very humble beginnings. So yeah, exactly what you were saying.
And it's so cool to see, not just what you've accomplished, because that's kind of like, that's a kind of a relative thing and a relative term with regard to happiness and what true success is. But your inquisitiveness, the fact that you've been able to generate so much information for people, is a really admirable thing. And I wonder, I'm actually curious as to what you've done in your life and what you've experienced in your life that has encouraged you to go down the paths that you have. And like you were showing me, pictures of the acne that you had when you were young.
Yeah.
And I too had acne growing up. And it's one of the things I'm actually kind of grateful for. If I hadn't, I might have been a little bit more full of myself, or I might not have gained a certain amount of humility around that. That was very character building.
For sure.
And
it's actually so ironic when I think about acne to what you just said as well. So, I got engaged recently. My fiance, gorgeous. We met. I was younger. She's older than me. And when we started dating, I looked like that, the picture I showed you, that amount of acne. And I always think back and I say, how did I pull that off? And I think just the acne, it was one of two things. It built so much self-confidence where if you look in the mirror and you see a face with all this acne that's just unavoidable, it's either you accept that as hey, I have to look at myself as less than, or you embrace it and your confidence goes up. And I think it's a very thin line between the two of lack of confidence or more self-confidence, just being able to own up to something that can't change in that moment.
Well, they can go both ways too, right? Something adversity can also be crippling for people, and it can lead them down worse paths. It can lead them to self-loathing and not feeling worthy, and not all that stuff as well. It can spur destructive behaviors, but it can also be something that is very character building. I think it also creates empathy, because if it's something if there's a challenge that you've gone through, then you understand when you see somebody else that might be suffering from whatever body image issues, or something, you can pick up on it pretty quickly, and it also makes you care for them and about them. I think that's it's amazing, all these things in life that we deal with that in the moment we think are so destructive and they're awful, but when you look back on them, you realize that those are the things that kind of gave us superpowers, which we all have, in order to kind of share our unique perspective.
Absolutely. And when we first met, I probably told you, but when I was 16, I was in a neck brace for 6 months, almost paralyzed. And it was sophomore year of high school where I'm in this neck brace, have no clue what I want to do with my life, depressed, resentful at the world, where I sort of fell down this path of business and entrepreneurship, and that led to the podcast. And it really just, changed me 1% a day, where looking back, it just completely changed the trajectory of my life just based off that negative situation. And for you, I've always been curious in terms of, we met through our buddy Jordan, DJ Swivel, and we've been shooting the Questions podcast, and we met in such an organic way where, podcast, you and Jordan, dinner, I have this handle, we're starting the show. And you've always been someone that is just so friendly, so welcoming, so humble. But I want to take this time on the show and also just to dive into like moments like that in your life when you were dealing with adversity, growing up in a very unique upbringing. Like, what were some moments in your life that you can reflect on and think back to those hardships that you had to deal with, and physical, emotional, whatever it may be?
I appreciate you, doing your best to try to bring the conversation back to me because I'm your guest. But I've been having a lot of fun learning about you, and I'll respect your
Hey,
pivot,
no, hey, we'll do
your pivot
both.
there, and I can just go into talking about myself here, which is my favorite thing to do. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, we don't fill out a form before we're born. We just find ourselves in this existence, and we find ourselves in different places. The place that I found myself in was in Malibu with a really great mom and a younger brother, and we had kind of like everything growing up. We, even for Malibu standards, like we lived in a big house and we had parties, and it was
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of rules, not a lot of responsibility. Um, those are things that I think that I've spent a lot of my life actually trying to repair. Actually,
Mm.
there's things that are disguised as luxuries and luck, but they actually, in my life, like we were talking about, how the fact I always had this really big beard and long hair and stuff, and part of it was because I always was trying to overcome the idea that people would think that I was like privileged, spoiled, preppy brat, and I never wanted to be that.
Yeah.
But on the outside, that's how everybody else I felt like viewed me because of these things that I had and I was born with. But I didn't have any choice in the matter.
Yeah.
And the fact that I didn't have any choice in the matter means that all the things that I did to compensate for that were overcompensations. I really had no right and no need to do those things. Instead, what I should be doing is embracing who I am, the things, the environment that I was given to me, and the things that were given to me, and then do the best that I can with it. And so much of like work that I've been doing is kind of trying to deconstruct the things that would seem like were not hardships but the opposite, right?
Absolutely.
And you, like me, we've all dealt with hardships, and I've dealt with a bunch of things that would be considered hardships in my life. And those have been really defining, but nothing more than love, right? Like I mean, when you are in love with somebody and you go through a breakup when you're young, it's like that's so
Sure.
formative. Like, and that was the thing that got me into music, was finding solace and comfort in other people's music and songs, going through
Yeah.
difficult times like that. And so that's why making music is so important to me now, because it kind of completes this circle where if I can pour emotions into music and it in turn helps somebody else, it's like giving back
Yeah.
to something that gave me so much. But I appreciate
That's
you
great.
saying all those nice things, to be
Of
called
course.
friendly and humble and nice or kind is,
Welcoming.
those are things, welcoming, thank you. Those are things that I hold in high regard.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that when we're gone, the only thing that we leave behind are the way that we've made other people feel. And
Absolutely.
if we can make other people feel seen and understood and cared for, then we're doing a good job on this planet. And that when we're gone, even though we didn't fill out a form before we're born, when we're gone, we can at least check the boxes that say I did my best.
Yeah. I love that. For you, so I saw you perform probably 3-4 months ago at the Radiator here in Malibu, and something about your music when I first
The
heard it.
Radiator? What's the Radiator?
Excuse me, not the Radiator.
I love that though. Dreamland.
Dreamland. I know.
Uh-huh.
What is the
I don't
Radiator?
know. I don't know.
Okay, Dreamland.
Anyway,
Excuse
I don't mean to
me.
correct you
No,
on your own
please.
show, but I didn't
I
want
knew
to,
that was wrong.
just in case people were like, ooh, the Radiator in Malibu. I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
I don't want people to get confused.
So when I saw you there, your music's incredible.
Oh,
What
thanks.
what for you led to music? I know like your mom's background and something that I learned more recently was your mom and her relationship with Elvis. And I was like, oh, that's a cool fun fact. But for you growing up, what was the first outlet that you really dove into in terms of music? Was it writing? Was it playing instruments? And how do you describe that feeling in terms of an outlet to express yourself when you were initially getting into music?
Mm. Uh, yeah, music has always been a really great form of therapy for me. I'll circle back to that. Initially, I was in college and I was in the dorms, and everybody was trying to figure out what they wanted to do. People were changing their majors, and I'm switching from this major to this major and all that stuff. And I kind of went into college like I just want to snowboard. That's what I want to
Yeah.
do, like this kind of free ride
Yeah.
mentality that I grew up with, right? I was focused on sports and doing things that I wanted to do, not what I
Yeah.
had to do or needed to do. And but then when I got into the dorms and I saw all these other people still trying to figure out what they wanted to take their life's energy and put it into, I realized that if I decide that now, that gives me such a jump start on pretty much all these people that are in college still trying to figure out what they want to do. And I, took some time to think about how do I want to spend my life? Do I want to like get really good on a motorcycle because I was riding a lot of dirt bikes
Yeah.
and wanted to race motocross at the time? Do I want to get really good on a snowboard? That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking too. Do I really want to get really good at surfing? Those three
Yeah.
things were kind of like if I were to do sports and pursue something physical. And then the other thing that I always did, kind of growing up just on the side as a hobby, was make music. And it was the moment where I realized I got to make up for lost time. I got to just kick ass playing music all day, every day. And as soon as I started learning my first couple chords on guitar, I started writing songs because that was my goal.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something. I felt like I had so many things to say and so many emotions that I wanted to figure out how to express those emotions in the form of words and music. And that's been my goal ever since. Um, in cut to many years later, and I see a man at a candlelight vigil talking about how he can't remember if the morning before he said goodbye to his daughter at the breakfast table or if he just snuck out the back door like he does sometimes when he's late for work and he's been spending all day, and he can't remember if he said goodbye to her because it was the last morning that he would ever see her because she was
Mm.
shot
Wow.
in Parkland in the school. Her name is Jamie Gutenberg, and her dad's Fred. And I'm watching him hold it together and tell this story about how the day before he cannot remember if he said his last
Wow.
goodbye to his daughter. And so I wrote a song about it. I sit there, I'm overwhelmed with what that must feel like. I'm crying. I'm, like
Yeah.
a lot of people feel. And then I make the choice instead of just, shaking it off and going about my day and shoving it aside. I make the choice to say, I'm going to dive deep into that feeling right now. And I'm going to really try to sit in that.
Mm.
And I'm going to use music as a way to take that emotion and express it. And what ends up happening is you write a song that then you eventually put out, tell the story, people listen to it who have also lost others, and they write to you and say thank you because this
Yeah.
really helped me process. As a matter of fact, Fred, in addition to the other people that listened to it, Fred and his little brother, they really appreciated the song, and they've become friends with them
Wow,
throughout the
that's powerful.
process. But
So powerful.
yeah, that's like, and for me, like the therapy that it brings me. I mean, writing these songs and then also recording them. There's moments where I'm recording these songs sometimes, and I'm just, I have to take a break because I'm just bawling, crying.
Yeah.
And it's such a release. So for me, it is very therapeutic, I think, to um, get into those emotions and not just kind of be the person that we all know what it feels like to, swallow it and just go on with our
Yeah.
day. But to try to really allow it to pass through you. And it's gotten to the point where it sounds crazy, and I know that when tragedy really hits me, it's all very hard to um, it's very hard to understand that this is a true statement, that there really at some point the line between beauty and tragedy becomes so blurred. There's
Can
things that are
you
so tragic that happen in life, but there's an equal amount of beauty that
Yeah.
comes from people's adversity and the things
Yeah.
that they go through and human connection
Absolutely.
that is so profound. And I would never wish adversity
Yeah.
or tragedy on anybody. But the things that are unavoidable and the things that happen, in order to try to find the meaning,
Yeah.
or the lesson or the purpose or a way to take this and make the world, your life and other people's life, a little bit better from it, um, is such a wonderful thing. And I spend a lot of time just looking for things that move me. I love having
Yeah.
conversations with people when they're going through something difficult, because all of a sudden I see, like, it's not just like their representative in front of me. Hey, how you
Yeah.
doing? Yeah, did you surf lately or whatever,
Yeah.
right? It's like
For sure.
all of a sudden this is my friend. Like,
Yeah.
this is a person. This is another human being that I care about. And
It's so
yeah.
interesting you say that. This morning I was listening to a podcast with Jay Shetty and the CEO and founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky.
Oh, cool.
And, he's glorified, incredible company, billionaire. And he was just talking about this idea. And he was such a relatable guy. I don't know if you've ever heard an interview with him, but, he's the guy that, hey, how can we make extra money and pay rent? Oh, we'll put air beds in the floor, sell it to friends, and hopefully we'll make some money to cover rent. And then what he said on the podcast today that hit me, that sort of reference to what you said, was, when he's gone and he's, long gone, will he be remembered as the Airbnb guy or Brian? And he talked about this small group of people that really know Brian, right? Like, you probably have experienced that as I have, where you meet all these people, you know who they are, but you don't know who they really are unless you sit down and you experience and have conversations with them to understand what they're going through and what problems they've had to deal with, and the depth of just what's brought them to who they are, not just who people think they are. And the way he described it is just to be more human, and that was the whole rant he went on, is just how can we all be so human in a world that there's so much glorification around success or money or whatever it may be. And I thought his perspective on just living in a world of creativity and curiosity and leaning into that was very profound the way he said it. But I'm curious to hear your perspective on that, right? You grew up around so many just influential people and from your family and that background. And at least from my perspective over the last 6 years, and we were talking before, coming from a small town and then now interviewing all these great people, from Larry King to the Tillman Fertitta, to the founders of Netflix and Twitch. The biggest lesson that I've always learned, because now when I go home and talk to my friends in high school, they're always asking like, oh, like, what are these people like? And I've heard you say it on another show with why am I blanking? Darren. It's people are just so human. They can't buy extra time. They don't have anything more than you do, and they deal with so many problems and challenges. I would love to dive into that perspective of you, of just growing up around influence and success and people of influence. Like, what are some lessons that you've learned, or maybe even misconceptions that you've been able to realize by, growing up in a unique environment and having a very just interesting perspective on the world and where you come from?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one of the things I'm grateful for, is that I feel like I've had a little bit of a peek behind the curtain on what
Yeah.
fame and fortune is like
Absolutely.
growing up, as a young, impressionable kid. And for me, I've always felt like sometimes the people that are the most like famous also have the most baggage in a way, because uh, is anybody new that they meet a friend, or are they just impressed with their celebrity? And there's a certain amount of reservation that they kind of carry with them sometimes. Not everybody. There's people that break the mold for sure. But I always just kind of like saw that growing up, that oh well, being really famous doesn't necessarily make you any happier. It actually has more potential to kind of make you a bit more lonely, isolated, those things. Being famous can be a real big a bonus too. My dad likes to use my dad likes to use her fame sometimes to, like, get in to see the Statue of Liberty. I've never seen the Statue of Liberty before, to a security guard, and they're like, "Oh, we'll take you into the private tour." Has those
Yeah,
perks.
for sure.
People give you free shit,
Yeah.
stuff like that, which are nice. But as far as what's really rewarding in life, human connection is everything for me. And I think for a lot of people. And sometimes when you just gain, excuse me, a certain amount of fame, it's harder to kind of decipher whether or not you're having a real human connection with somebody, or if
Yeah.
there's an agenda there. And that can be a challenge and a hurdle to overcome. So it's just meant that, from my point of view, what it's taught me is that those aren't the things to really strive for. Don't strive for fame just for fame's sake. Don't strive for money just for money's sake. If you want to be well known because you're trying to improve people's lives. Be well known because you believe so passionately in what it is that you're doing with your art or your media or your message. That is your driving force. That is the reason why you're putting yourself out there. It's been really hard for me, actually, to put my music out there and to support my own music sometimes, because I never want to be the person who's trying to sell you something. I don't want to be a salesman of my own stuff.
Yeah.
And through my own kind of like therapy and men's group and talking with people, it's been shared with me that the thing that I'm selling, quote unquote, is something that I believe is good for people. So I'm not selling them something that will depreciate. I'm not selling them something that has a limited amount of value or a time stamp on it. I'm selling them something that I believe will potentially make their lives better if they resonate with it. And so it's actually one of the most noble things I can do is to present the things that I'm working so hard on to people. And that's been a big adjustment for me. Big adjustment, really, really hard. And it's a daily, kind of practice, is to not come across like I'm just trying to, be a salesman, of myself, especially considering my background, where people think that my life is comfortable enough. Why do I need, why do you need my 99 cents to download your song or whatever? That's what it used to be. But
it's streaming now.
yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's different.
For sure. I love that perspective. Regarding when we recorded however many episodes we've had for our podcast questions, and you've always been someone that has not only a unique perspective, but you'll dive into the historical references of a lot of things. I'd love to talk about like growing up in terms of your education, going to college. Like, how did you view the world in terms of not only career path, but studying history? I know you'll bring up topics that I wish I knew more about that I could contribute to, but talk to me about some of your interests outside of not only music or sports, but education as a whole, and how that's played a role in your life. Because the people that we bring on, the conversations we have, it's very collaborative and educational focused, and you have just so much to dive into. And I'd love to hear how you view education, how you've now instilled that upon your kids, and how you think about that in your life.
It's nice of you to say. The travel. Like, if you're young, and you want to learn anything and you're curious about anything, or if you're a parent and you have young kids, travel. Get them in places where people live differently than the way you live. It's just the best education, like, hands down. And I'm eternally grateful to my parents that they brought me to places around the world where I got to see that not just some people, but a majority of people around the world live a very different life than I live. And I grew up in Malibu, right? Very different. Perspective is huge. People that have more limited perspective, not by their own faults, just but because they haven't experienced the world outside of wherever it is they are. If there's any way that you have the means to just be able to get outside of where it is that you're used to, do it.
Yeah.
It just broadens your perspective, and I think that that's very good, not just for yourself, but I actually think it's really good for humanity. it takes people from thinking about this us versus them mentality, which we all deal with. You're a baby. It's me, me, me. I'm hungry. I'm blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And then you get to realize that your sibling has something else. No, that's mine. So it's me against them. And then it's your high school against the other high school. And then it's your country versus another
Yeah.
country. And some people exist in that world. They don't ever travel outside their own countries, and they just kind of have this sense of pride, and they see it as this us versus them kind of mentality.
Yeah.
When really, talk to Carl Sagan about this, we're just on a tiny little dust particle floating through space,
Yeah.
right? And there really is no us versus them. We are, we are one,
Yeah. You know,
without sounding too cheesy.
you're gonna love that. Yesterday I was talking to Jordan, and
Mm.
he picks up the phone. He's like, "Dude, have you been studying the aliens?" when he gets here later.
He's
So when
into
I
that
when
right
I
now.
think about us versus them, he was going on this alien kick. He's sending me all these
Yeah.
books to read, and I was like, "Oh, interesting. We'll talk about it on the show."
Yeah.
No, it's so interesting you said that, and I couldn't relate more. And for context, the biggest thing that changed not only my life besides the neck injury that I brought up was traveling. I grew
Yeah.
up in an environment where I literally didn't know or experience traveling on a airplane until I was 16, and I bought the plane ticket myself.
Wow.
And
See,
like,
this is what's so amazing about you,
still
man.
to this day, and it's so funny if my parents are watching this, I tell them like, hey, we gotta do something. One, like they don't have passports, they've never left the country. My brothers, my parents, and I think now I've been to over 20 countries over the last
Wow.
like 6 years, different endeavors, business, some at the time, which I'll get into, school trip. The first trip I ever took, first time I flew on an airplane, was flying from Virginia to Toronto. So that was my first little quick flight.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I'm on a plane, 15 years old. And then Toronto to Beijing. I went to China on a school trip, and I look at it as really 0 to 100 in
Yeah.
terms of travel experience. Went from Beijing to Shanghai to Xi'an to Hong Kong. It was a school trip that we did probably with 30 kids, and I got selected. I took my history series back then in school, and I remember coming back a completely different human, right? It's the perspective on the world, and obviously it's a very unique place than many other places in the world. But that idea of traveling and seeing new places, it's hard to even describe unless you do it. And I come from, I believe, like the epitome of going from my small town, my small bubble road trips growing up to then seeing this whole other unique world, the poverty there. And it blew me away. And like to what you're saying, for you, are there any specific locations that they have either mean the most to you, or environments that you've traveled to that are your favorites, whether that's when you were younger or even today in terms of bringing your kids?
Yeah, well, I mean, the places that have been most influential for me growing up, when we did a trip to Africa when I was young, we went to Kenya, and we did, like a safari, right? It was like a pretty luxurious way to do Africa, right? We did the safari in
Yeah.
Kenya and stuff, but it was amazing because we got to spend time with the Maasai warriors that were like out on the plains, and they would come over to the
That's
hotel
so
and we would
great.
play games with them and stuff. And, these people were like just living such a different life. Yeah, such a different life. And it
Yeah.
was very admirable too, like the life that they were living. They were like stoic in a way. They knew exactly who they were and what they wanted, and there was a brotherhood. And so I think Africa was a great example. Indonesia is a really cool place to go. Thailand is a cool place to go. I loved
I've been to Bali.
Japan. Japan was amazing. I loved Japan because culturally it's so different, right? I kind of like thinking about like humanity when we left Africa, and groups go this way and they head east, right, and they
Yeah.
populate Asia, and then groups go this way, and the ones that make it to England they eventually like sail across, and that's basically what all my culture comes from, right? It was like
Yeah.
English essentially and Americans. Um, and then you go, now all of a sudden you're circumnavigating the world and you're going on a plane from LA to Japan, which is a kind of like a far east
Yeah.
version of Asia. Culturally it's so different, but technologically it's even more advanced in ways, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like such an amazing place to go where you're like, wow, I have all the amenities and all the luxuries that I'm used to, um, and this amazing like high standard of living, but culturally
Yeah.
it's like so different,
For sure.
which is fantastic. I
Absolutely.
love going down to Mexico and Central America and those places. I've spent a lot of time down there. Surf trips have been really great. Also,
Yeah.
just going on surf trips to off the beaten path, and you see people. One of the things that has always struck me, going to places like Indonesia or Thailand, they have time. They have time. We don't have time. I have no fucking time in my life. Excuse the F bomb
Oh,
there.
you're good.
I got no fucking time in my life. Like
Yeah.
I wake up, get the kids ready for school. I take them to school, I drive them to school, carpool. Okay, kids, get out of the car, go do your thing. I go there, I go like straight to my workout, which is, I guess, a luxury. And then I come to the studio, and I'm in the studio until I got to go pick the kids up, and then I get them home, and then I got to make dinner and do this, whole thing. And if I'm lucky, I can get some kind of like an activity that I like to do, but it's all based around activities, right?
Yeah.
It's all based around doing something, being productive. And this is grained into us as Americans, as like, in Western society. And you go to a place like Thailand or Indonesia, and there's people just sitting on the porch, just hanging out,
Yeah.
talking, having a soda. You're like, fuck. I mean, there's a part of me that you see it almost as like this unfair trade. Yes, I have nice linen sheets to sleep in at night, but I also have no time to ponder, to sit, to be, to meditate, to just kind of like exist with other people. It's something that I try to carve out in my life. I try to, have a good, decent meditation practice and moments where I can at least do that. But, that's one of the big things that I learned from traveling is just that we live so differently.
Yeah.
And not all of it is necessarily for the better of our psyche, of our mental health, is this a meaningful existence that we have on this planet, right?
Absolutely. I think I love when I have those moments of you surround yourself with people naturally that are like you, that you see the world in similar ways, that you're maybe moving towards in a similar direction, and then you meet, whether that's someone internationally or just a new group of, or a new individual, and they just do life differently, whether that's for the positive or you could view it as a negative, and you're like, wow, there's other ways to do this, how we are doing this thing. And I think in a world where there's so much social media indoctrination around certain topics and ideations and just how to live, like, what are your thoughts on that? We've talked about this on questions, but in terms of social media, right? And even, and I say this because I'm curious, right? Coming from, your siblings have some of the most amount of followers on social media, and in this world of social and how it's changed over time, like your family are also like pioneers in terms of being able to see where the ball is moving and where the puck's going. Like, what is your view on social media individually, but also like what you've experienced over the years from seeing television and how that's worked in terms of being on the other side of it, like you've talked about? Because like nowadays with social media, the amount of consumers that just, we live in a world where it's just endless scrolling and overconsumption of content. And you've also seen it from the other side, and we've talked about this in depth in terms of screen time and what was the things we talked about on questions? It was like the different topics of like caffeine, pornography.
Oh yeah.
One of them was like the social media element of things. For you, how do you view social media in today's world, but also entertainment as a whole in your past and how you grew up?
It's a big topic because I have a lot of thoughts about that. I'll do the best I can to keep it concise. If you ask my wife, she would tell you that I'm addicted to my phone. And I admittedly agree that like it is a problem, right? Like that and I think most of us can relate to the fact that you just kind of mindless scroll for a second, or you open up an app that you just did. It's a total reactionary thing, right?
Absolutely.
I do the best I can to make my phone a tool for productive use, not reactive, right? I try not to live in this reactive state where I just use it as something that, I have a video, funny, this. I try not to let it prompt me. I try to prompt it. I use it as it's a great tool for to-do lists. It's a great tool to get your podcast out there. It's a great tool for keeping in contact with people that are friends or business partners or whatever via text. It's a camera, which is nice for capturing images of your kids. Those are the things that I try to use my phone for. Social media, nothing has changed. people have been blowing the whistle on the fact that there are these algorithms that are working against humanity to try to get you to go deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole to keep you engaged. And it's splitting us apart, man. It's splitting society apart. It's really sad. And people, they see it on their phone, or they see it from a friend or somebody they feel like they trust, or an account they follow that posts something, and they just take it as like, gospel, and it's got to be real, and it's got to be this. And, I do the best I can when it comes to like where I'm getting information to just try to go back to reliable sources. What's the source?
Yeah.
I try to stick to things that have been like proven sources of information for a long time. Do some of them have bias? Absolutely. It exists on both sides. But if you look at enough things, and you bounce around and try to get as many different sources as you can, you're going to get a general picture of what's going on in the world, in my view. And the less that you can use social media as to fill that news void, the better. If you can use social media to just be like funny videos or things that I'm interested in, like, better, fun exercises or how to eat properly or things, self-improvement stuff, it's a great tool.
Yeah.
But to use it as, like to try to get like a lay of the land and to figure out what's going on in the world, it's just so skewed.
Yeah.
And it's so skewed individually for every different person, right? So it's so if you open up my discovery page, it's just for me, it's mostly just like flying videos and some exercise stuff
sure.
and health, and those types of things. Funny stuff,
Yeah.
car. There's car crash dashes or something like that. Kind of, it's pretty interesting because it shows you how accidents happen on the road. I find that interesting.
Yeah, those videos are interesting.
But yeah, that's a whole can of worms that I think is a real problem because nothing really has been done about it. And I do not view social media as a scary thing at all. I think that it's a wonderful tool that has the potential to bring more peace to this world than ever before. Connectivity between people around the world at their thumbs. Yeah. My ability to be able to. I did a video a long ass time ago where I asked people from around the world to contribute to the music video and use the words "I believe" in a creative way. And I had people from Iran, Pakistan, all over Africa, China and Japan, places that I would have never guessed I would have gotten videos from. Yeah. And they all sent me these videos, and it was so wonderful. And then to see everybody together around like a common cause, and this was many, many years ago. The ability that the internet and connectivity and social media has in order to see the common humanity in each other is huge. It's huge potential. Unfortunately, it's being used for profit in order to keep people engaged. You keep them enraged. Yeah. And a lot of people are online enraged because they're seeing things that trigger this feeling. If you're a gambling addict, the winning isn't what keeps you coming back. It's losing. When you lose, it triggers the addictive part of the brain. That's the part of the brain that then keeps you coming back. So the act of losing is actually the thing that is addictive to them. It's the same thing with social media. The act of seeing something that makes you upset and angry is the thing that keeps you coming back. Yeah. And that's the trap that, a lot of people, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm absolved of any guilt here. Like me too, probably at times. But it's something that people need to be really, really careful of is to understand that, social media, that algorithm is not working for you. It is using you as a tool in order to keep you on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
That
was that as short? That was as short
great.
as I could be.
No, that was great. And even in the second aspect of growing up, television, you've seen your fair share there. How does it correlate with like how you've seen television to then social media in terms of the entertainment purpose, but also like the attention economy that we live in terms of the shows, the family, the correlations, and for me too, it's diving into the perspective of Brandon, because the way I view it, right, is our friendship over the last almost a year or so. I've always viewed not only you as a friend, but just someone that has truly created this path for themselves and has been so aligned with your values from interviews I've heard you in to our conversations to the guests, the people that you surround yourself with. And, you see these things on social media where like it's this big web and like one decision can take you here. And if you just, the little decisions are actually the big ones because they set you down this entire path. Like when you think back on your life in terms of how you've seen social media or success, do you ever think back and say, wow, like I'm different from maybe family or friends or peers growing up? Because I think it's just such a, again, unique perspective that I want to get into in a world where, and I'm curious to know like your relationship with not only Brody, Kylie, Kendall, these people that people watching, they see them, they have hundreds of millions of followers, and it's just so different than people that are just scrolling social media. And you've seen both sides, someone that's like, hey, I don't care, I don't need this, but also you're in a world, and you said this quote on the Darren show, it's like the longitude and the success that has come from that is just unique. And I think I'd love to dive into that in terms of like the relationship with Kylie, Kendall, mom, dad, just family overall. Because when I think about my life with my brothers, and I'm 23 right now. One of my brothers is 25 and one's 29. When I had a kid, I have a 7-year-old niece. Incredible. I live in California. They're in Virginia. We're so extremely close. But as the youngest, you start to see over time, I'm like, wow, like everyone just come from the same background, but everyone goes so far out into their own lane of life and how they view the world and experiences and friends and conversations. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on all things family, your relationship to your family, how that's changed over time, and more so just how you view the world.
I want to thank you again for saying those nice things about me in the beginning. It means a lot because, I too, like I think everybody, I struggle. Like I struggle sometimes too. Am I on the right path? Am I doing the right things? Am I spending my time correctly? Am I being a good enough dad? Am I being present enough for them? Am I, working hard enough and efficiently enough in the things that I should be working in? Am I successful enough? Do I feel like if I compare myself to other people and the things that other people have and the things that other people that have accomplished at my age or a little bit older or even younger, how do I stack up against that? I have all those same feelings and insecurities that I think a lot of people do. I want to make sure that if you're listening to this, and you're somebody that has that, I just want them to know that like they're not alone. Like I deal with that too. I know you. I'm sure you do. We all do, right? And you mentioned like my brother Brody and Kendall and Kylie. I guarantee you they do too. Like I guarantee you they struggle with stuff. I know they do. I know they struggle with things that are challenging because life is challenging. And we're constantly, it doesn't matter how many followers you have, you're constantly comparing yourself to somebody else and evaluating where you're at in life. And it can be difficult. It can be humbling.
Yeah.
So I know that, they, just like everybody else, struggles. There's a great shirt that somebody gave me recently. It said, it says, be kind on the front. And it says, everybody you meet is going through something that you know nothing about. Be kind. And it's just true.
Yeah.
So yes, does the average person know nothing about what Kylie goes through with all her followers? Yeah. They don't know anything about what she's going through. She also doesn't know anything about what they're going through. So just be kind to people and just understand that we all are, I really do believe if there's anybody out there that isn't, tell me. I think we're just trying to do our best.
Yeah.
I think everybody is doing their best. This is another big conversation is Brene Brown talks about this in one of her podcasts is your philosophy in life that everybody's doing their best? Some people say no. Some people say no, I think they could do better. I choose to believe, having explored the two options, that people in this moment, in that moment where they sit, and up to that point, they're doing their best. Does it mean that their best could be something different tomorrow? Yes, but it's up to them to decide. And at this point, they're doing their best. And then it gets into whole boundaries and all that stuff. You have to have proper boundaries in order
Yeah.
to believe that. Because if you believe people are doing their best, but then you don't have good boundaries and you allow, somebody that maybe doesn't align with you or isn't working as hard as you, to drag you down, that just means that you don't have proper boundaries, right? So if you have good boundaries, you know what you want, you believe that you're doing your best, and if your best looks different than somebody else's, then that's great. But you have to have good boundaries, and the only way that you can believe that some other people are doing their best is to have those boundaries.
Absolutely.
I believe that people are doing their best. Doesn't matter who you are, whether you're, extremely successful by society's standards or you're struggling by society's standards. I believe people are doing their best, and people that are doing their best deserve the benefit of the doubt. They deserve kindness,
Yeah.
and they deserve to live in a world where, they're treated like a human being, because we all have to lay in bed at night worried about something.
Yep. That's the truth. Appreciate that perspective.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
How did your life change when you had kids? I interviewed someone recently.
Oh, why do
and-
you ask,
no,
Casey, Mr. Engagement, huh?
Not even that. Someone I interviewed recently, they said, you don't know what true love is until you have kids. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I remember the first time I came over to your place, met your kids. They're incredible. And you just, not only you're such a great dad and the way you speak about your kids, but I'm curious to know how that having kids changed your life as a man and also how you see the world.
Well, I now discovered after yesterday that there's 3 things in life that you can't oversell. Having kids, an NHRA drag race, and the WSL wave pool in Lemoore.
Done.
Those 3 things you can't oversell. You can tell somebody how great it is until they go.
Yeah.
Until they go through it, they'll never know. Yeah, having kids is just something that I love watching other people go through it, because it does change you forever. It just broadens. We were talking earlier about perspective. It's just that you have without throwing shade on people that don't have kids, because it's a totally perfect existence. That's fine. But the truth is, for me, my capacity for love, and I want to use that word hatred, because there's always a yin and a yang, right? The more that your love increases, the more that your opportunity for joy and challenge, we'll use those 2 words, open up, and the spectrum widens. Having a kid, it's true. You know no love like you've ever known, but you also know no challenge like you've ever known. The big thing for me, when I laid eyes on my daughter for the first time, I realized that it was never about me. I thought life was about me. I thought I was supposed to have fun and go surfing and gain experiences and be a better person and eat better and figure out how to improve myself. I actually
get better sleep like me.
I thought I was doing that for me.
Yeah.
And I realized when I had a kid, no, I was doing that for her all along. I was becoming the person that I could be, the best version that I thought I could be, so that I could be the best dad that I could be to my kids. That's why I was doing it all along. I just didn't know. I never had the perspective.
Yeah.
And having kids gives you that perspective where you realize, oh wow, this whole life thing, I thought it was about me. I'm just the person who passes the baton off. That's it. I'm just another person that takes the baton and passes it off. And it was never about me. It was about the process. It was about the baton getting down the road to hopefully a better future for my kid and for then their kid. And, so that's just something that you only know once you go through it. And it's a wonderful thing. And, I know that you're a, big relationship guy, which is great. So I'm sure that at some point you'll experience that in life, and it's a wonderful thing. The challenge is that you can only hang out with people that have kids now from this point on. So you gotta, your pool of friendship really shrinks a bit. But there's a lot of amazing people out there that have kids, so that's good.
I love that.
Yeah, and it is challenging. It's also very, very challenging.
Absolutely. So, you when we first met, we were at your place. We did the sauna. We were talking about it before, and I know
It's
I've
platonic. It was platonic. Yeah.
I've on other shows that we've done on questions. I'm always talking about sleep data, all this stuff that I love and enjoy. You're like, yeah, when you have kids, you can't do that. But I'd love to talk about some of the health
That's
influences in
right.
your life, just in terms of you talk about like your friend Rich, and you
Mhm.
have all these amazing people in your life that are insightful and knowledgeable regarding health and lifestyle and how they live. Like, what are some daily rituals and habits that you've had? Of course, it's changed with kids. I've heard you say that, but just how you live your day to day life, right? When it comes to how you view time, how you view health, how you view what you eat, and relationships. Just what's your daily routine, schedule, and really non-negotiables in your life?
Yeah. Non-negotiables is an interesting term because I think that one of the most important things is to just not put too much pressure on yourself. Don't be so
Yeah,
hard on yourself if you don't nail it, if you're imperfect. Um, it's it's a process. It's an evolution. The things that we think we know today, we might be different next week because we've met a new friend that
new
has new
information.
information or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And I think one of the best things. Have you seen the Blue Zone documentary on Netflix?
I got the purple sweet potatoes in my fridge now, so
Yeah.
I
Well, one
think
of the things that
I'm
somebody said in
implementing.
it, one of the older people, they said, "Well, I never was trying to like live a long time," you know, which kind of means that like if you're trying to live a long time, you're probably also existing with a certain amount of underlying stress that I have to do everything right in order to meet this goal. And that can be not healthy. There are things and there are, I don't want to say rules, but there are guidelines that I live my life by that I believe to be true. And that I also know make me feel better about myself. Hitting goals and setting goals and hitting those goals make you feel good about
Yeah,
yourself. It's empowering. I'm totally fine with that. I love to do that. I love to exercise. Exercise is a huge thing. Peter Attia, is that how you say his last
Peter
name?
Attia.
Or Attia?
The
He was
book is
saying
great.
that you can start if you started smoking cigarettes right now, your chance of I'm gonna make these numbers up, but I'm just making it for the sake of the argument. That you decrease your chances of surviving the next 10 years by like 30%. But if you start exercising today, you increase your chances of living like fivefold.
I think I heard him say
Something
like
like that, right?
every hour of working out is equivalent to 9 hours of extra life. Obviously, it's a statistic, and I think he said something along those lines.
But
So,
basically, you can make much better gains in longevity and health by starting to exercise as opposed to making much smaller unhealthy decisions that would
yeah,
really affect you on a much smaller level.
yeah,
So exercise is huge.
yeah,
So exercising, stay moving, keep your blood flowing. Sleep is really important. It is really important to get good sleep. Start to recognize some of the things that give you shitty sleep. Alcohol gives you shitty sleep.
yeah.
Caffeine, drinking too late can give you shitty sleep. Um, and then when it comes to food, I do believe that like developing a healthy relationship with food is important. Don't let food be a cure for anxiety because that's a big thing, is that people get hungry and then they get anxious and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm hungry. And then the food becomes a cure for their anxiety and they get
Yeah.
into this feedback loop where whenever they're hungry, they eat. Whenever they're hungry, they eat. That's not natural. That's
Yeah.
not normal. That's not how humans existed,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
For sure.
that's not how our bodies were designed. So to get comfortable with your own hunger, I think is really an important thing. It also helps you to make better food decisions. These days, because of new information, I try to eat as much as I can in the middle of the day.
Like
Not
intermittent fasting a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, and also just kind of like even if I'm not like in an intermittent thing, like allowing your body to wake up before
Yeah.
you load it up with food and allowing your body some time to digest before you go to sleep. So just
Yeah.
trying to like get your calories in the middle of the day because it's the best time for you
Yeah.
to be able to metabolize stuff. And then the more that you can eat whole foods, the better. Foods in their whole form are great. Going back to Darren, if you read his book Super Life,
Yep.
there's a passage in there that talks about an apple. And, an apple not only has all these incredible nutrients and macronutrients and all this amazing complexity of all these things that your body needs, but what an apple also has is the fiber and the digestive enzymes in order for you to actually maximize those nutrients. And as soon as you juice that thing or process it in some way, you're now throwing off the balance of digestive enzymes to nutrients. Foods are meant to be eaten in their whole form, right?
Yep.
Something processed is just not the way that it's supposed to be eaten, and that's a big issue with food these days. So, the more that you can eat things in their whole form. I don't eat meat that much. I'm also, like last night they served a little meat at the, after the surf ranch thing. I'll eat it. It's a whole food. It's,
Yeah.
I don't do it often. I don't like factory farming. I don't like
Yeah.
contributing to that. It's terrible for the environment. Another great statistic, David Attenborough.
I'm not even familiar with him.
He's the guy that narrates all of the Planet Earth and stuff like
Oh
that, the
yeah,
older
for
guy. And he
sure.
had one recently, he said this thing that I thought was amazing. Human beings make up 33% of the mass of mammals on this planet. So if you took all the mammals on this planet and you put
Wow.
them on a scale, 33% would be human beings.
That's crazy. That's it.
66%, or is it like 60, 62% or something, would be the food that we are growing for ourselves. Cows, pigs, all those mammals.
Wow.
That's what factory farming is. It's 60-something percent. And what's left, it's either 4 or 6%, but it's like basically 5%. Every other wild mammal
Oh my gosh.
is just 5%. Every other bear, all
Yeah.
the wildebeest in Africa,
Yeah.
the whales, all of it, all the deer, the mountain lion, the rabbits, all of
That's
it,
crazy.
5%. That's it. This is our planet
Yeah.
to either like destroy or figure out a way
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
live in harmony. So factory farming, that's the biggest chunk. Like we got to
Yeah.
deal with that. We got to deal with the way that we handle food.
I'm curious, but what would you say? There's no easy solution because it's so like it's the dollars are there and people are focused on that. Like, what do you think? How do people change such problems? Obviously, you don't have the answers, but when you think about large problems as a whole, like how do you view that in terms of there's people watching, listening. You can obviously change the people around you, people that listen and plant seeds in their head. Like whether that's one specific problem that you see factory farming or other ones, like how do you view the world in terms of solving large problems individually but also as a collective?
It's a good question. I actually this has the tendency to get rather political because
Yeah,
because
for sure.
there's people um have different opinions on how much government should get involved on big problems like that. Like for instance,
Yeah.
climate change. There's a group of people that believe that the free market will figure it out. The consumer will demand electric vehicles. The consumer will demand nuclear power
Yeah.
plants instead of coal burning power plants. I tend to be somebody that thinks that what you need is some oversight because society has been proven to be very un unaware of the impact that they're having on their environment. When humans made it to Australia, there were all these huge animals there that existed, huge mammals, giant mammals. Killed them all. They're gone, extinct. When the humans came to America, there were mammoths. There was a giant sloth that stood 20 feet tall. It was more like a bear, but it was
Yeah.
of the sloth family. It stood 20 feet tall. All these amazing giant mammals. Killed them all. All of them. Easter Island. Humans lived on the island,
Yeah.
and they fucking chopped the trees down, and they used all their resources to extinction. The assumption that we're going to have the foresight to be able to not do that on a global scale, I think is pretty ridiculous. And I think you need to have panels. You need to have committees. You need to have, you could use the bad word government, but you need to have some oversight as to how we're making decisions on the whole. I think if we're going to have any chance of creating some kind of a balance. So I do think that a lot of those problems come down to, another bad word, regulation. But like you have to figure out a way to redesign the system kind of from the top down, and you have to have that oversight, and you have to invest in the right areas. And then you have to kind of make certain things
Yeah.
illegal. Like you just at some point we're gonna have to say you just can't pump greenhouse gas into the atmosphere anymore. You know,
Yeah. Definitely hard problems to solve, but I appreciate the perspective.
very hard to solve. Yeah, very hard to solve. But just do what you can for now. But also, it's important to not fall into the trap that because I recycle and because I drive a Prius,
That
I'm
you're
doing
doing
my
it right.
part,
Yeah.
right? Because what it really does need is like systematic change.
Yeah.
I mean, without people pushing for example, I kind of am a proponent for nuclear energy, and I could be swayed one way or the other, but currently that's what I am because at least it is a carbon-free way of doing it, and there are places around the world that do it in a very responsible way with small reactors, and we have these ways to reuse the stuff with very little waste, and there is, in my opinion, there are ways to do it well, but that isn't going to happen, by me driving a Prius or by
Yeah.
me,
Yeah. For
driving a
sure.
Tesla or buying a Tesla or, using a
Yeah.
wooden toothbrush. It's going to happen because, agencies and government basically says like this is how we're going to get our power.
Yeah.
We're going to reallocate funds, and we're going to start putting taxes on carbon emissions and things like
Yeah.
that. So there's a certain amount of it. That's a much deeper conversation, and
For sure.
I'm always very open to having those conversations with somebody that thinks differently than I
Yeah.
do because I love learning about that stuff. Where I stand right now, I just think that like humanity has to have some
Yeah.
kind of oversight, even if it's something that we elect for ourselves, like in a
Hmm.
democracy. But we can elect a group of people that can have some oversight on how we're doing things as a whole, because our track record is not great. It just isn't.
Yeah.
It's not.
Totally. Well, I have a couple more questions before we wrap up here.
Okay.
When it comes to the future and just your life, like what excites you, right? Whether that's from a business perspective, family perspective, life, kicking it in and doing the surf. What is it called? The surf. Where'd you go yesterday?
The wave pool.
Yeah,
It's
the wave pool.
yeah.
Like doing things like that. Like when you look forward in your life, like what excites you the most? And I'd love to have just two parts of the answer. One of just personal, but also one that's more of a, when you think about in the entrepreneurial context of building companies, right? It's like the mission of you, your life, the people around you, and I think that's where entrepreneurship is. It's such a beautiful thing. And back to the Airbnb story, it's like you in a business in the earliest days, you're finding people that align with a mission, but more so the core values and just the alignment of how you see the world. And that's exciting to envision a future of growth and shared values with a collective group of people, whether that's business or family. So for you, like what excites you in your life from a personal perspective, but also as a collective of your peers and family and friends?
Hmm. The thing that's been the most rewarding for me is when I feel like I'm helping somebody navigate a challenge in their life. When I'm just am an audience for them and can be like a sounding board. It actually really does inspire me when somebody shares something that they're going through, and I can give some perspective, or I can just be there to listen and help them kind of navigate through an issue. It's something that really makes me feel fulfilled, and I'm inspired and excited about that and figuring out ways in my life to incorporate that more. Um, and then with regard to it's an interesting thing. For a long time, I really wanted to make music work, and I said to myself, if I could figure out a way to make music like a career and make it something that is like what I do and make it sustainable, God, I'll feel so good about myself. I remember just thinking that
Yeah.
like it's a really hard fucking thing to do. It's been a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to slow down and say, hey, dude, you did it. Like, be happy, be proud. Like, instead of continuing to, beat your head against the wall, but I want more, but I want more, but
Yeah.
I need more, but I need more. Go back to where you were in your shoes a while ago and realize that, like, you've done that. Like, you've done something a goal that you set for yourself that you felt like would bring you so much happiness. Enjoy the wins. And then, as far as like entrepreneurially, because I know that that's a big it's kind of a big
Yeah.
topic, right, in your podcast. Um, I really want to collaborate with friends, uh, and have a common goal with a team of people, then figure out a way to make a business out of making people's lives better. Not necessarily for myself, even though that is inspiring to benefit from something like that on my own on the back end. But really, if I can do something that I'm passionate about and that I really do feel like improves people's lives, and figure out a way to do that with people who I love and see eye to eye on the
Yeah.
same issue and feel passionate about, that's a real sweet spot for me. So I've been doing a lot of that, and I've
Yeah.
been, making, I mean, a lot of it's pie in the sky stuff, but I've spent a lot of time making lists on my phone about, what are the big ideas, what are the
Yeah.
big things that like I want to do and I want to achieve, and start really going after those. My friend has an analogy that, you can take all your eggs and put them on one train, and work really hard on that one train, but you never know where the tracks are going to lead and what kind of obstacles you'll have. It's much better to have multiple trains going, because you can jump between them and shift your eggs around depending on which one's kind of
Yeah.
getting traction, right? And that's kind of the life that I've been living as of late, trying to balance these things that I'm passionate about and these new ideas and these new businesses, that I've been exploring, but also, continuing to make music from a pure place, continuing to try to be a really good father and husband and
love that.
and brother and son. Those are really important things to me as well. Like I said, making people feel good
Yeah.
is something that you really leave behind, and I actually really I feel so good. I get so much benefit out of feeling like I've made somebody else feel seen. I think that's all we really want in life.
Yeah.
We just kind of want to feel seen and understood and heard and loved. That we can have all the other things. We can have no money, no food, but if we have somebody that believes in us and is proud of us and loves us and is truly inspired by us, and that's that'll keep you going.
Absolutely. Love that perspective. Well, lastly, I know I mentioned it a couple times on the show, but have a podcast that we've been filming,
Yes.
Questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be coming out soon. For people that are watching, like, what excites you about Questions? And I'd love for you to just kind of speak from your perspective on the shows that we've been doing over there, so that people that made it this far in the episode can have something to look forward to outside of this conversation, but in the conversations that we've been having together in a different context.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've had great guests. I mean, having the guests that we've had in here has been really inspiring, and being able to kind of pick up on some of the things that they've been doing. Yeah, it's also funny. It's you can't ignore how beautifully it all came together either, right? I mean, I think that we've told that story, right? Probably
Yeah.
in the beginning or in the first or an intro episode
Yeah.
or something. But the way that it all came together just made too much sense. We were like, oh, the universe is screaming at us to do this,
Yep.
which is very cool. And this is really I see what we're doing as an opportunity to just learn, to sit down with people that we can learn something about, learn what their process is like, learn about how they view the world, in an effort to broaden our own perspective
Yeah.
and to become better, more informed people. And it's been a great experience. I just want to keep doing more and
Yeah.
more and more.
Me too.
Yeah.
And
I mean, in Jordan, God, that day.
Jordan's about to be in here. He's got to go crazy on aliens. Can't wait.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I want to say too, just for the quick context of people that maybe haven't seen that, if it's once it's live, is I owned the domain @questions on Instagram, and I know Jordan has told it, but share your perspective on how it happened on your end when Jordan came to you and he's like, "Hey, my buddy Casey has questions."
We were sitting at dinner, and our friend said to Jordan, "You ask a lot of questions, don't you?" And Jordan goes, "Oh, that was my nickname growing up." And Kaylee goes, "Oh, that's what I call Brandon because he's always asking questions, you know." And we kind of look at each other like, "That's funny," and that's one of the reasons why Jordan and I had always gotten along, because we're both very curious,
Yeah.
you know, just about the way things work, and we're not afraid to, if we don't know something about how something works, is to just, you know, pretend like we do. We'd rather go and ask the questions, right? Like, how does that work, and why
Yeah.
did you press that, and what, you know. So we really saw eye to eye in that regard. And that moment, somebody at the table said, "You guys should do a podcast and call it Questions." And we were like, "That's a great idea. We should do that because we got a lot of questions to ask people." And then the very next morning,
It's crazy.
he woke up and checked his Instagram, and he saw that you, his friend, had posted something that basically said, like, "At Questions, who would like a podcast called At Questions," or something like that,
Pretty
right?
much. I had the Instagram username just questions,
Right.
and I had no plans what I was gonna do with it. I posted about it because I got it the day before,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and then that's when he was like, "Dude, you're not gonna believe
You're
this."
not going to believe what we just planned last night,
Yeah.
you know? So, and then Jordan was like, "We've got to meet. Like, Brandon, you got to meet Casey. He's my buddy." And you came out here, and we started
Yeah.
meeting out here, and we were just like, "All right, let's do this." We started
Yep.
booking guests, and, you know, we've been kind of trading off, like, finding people to talk to,
Yeah, it's
which has
great.
been a really cool thing, too, because we all have, like, different kind of genres and people to pull from.
For sure.
And it's been a fantastic experience, and I can't wait to, like, just keep it going. But you can't
Absolutely.
deny how serendipitous that was. Right?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
well, Brandon, I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Oh,
It's such a
good man,
pleasure.
Casey. Yeah, next time I'm only asking you questions. Yeah.
Sounds like a
Enough
plan.
about me. Yeah.
Perfect.
Good man.
We got it.